okay, this guy is fraudulently upfront cheating. What do we do? And we went to the board and said, this is real risk. We could just really prove, and the conventional industry was starting to get concerned about organic. We could prove that there's bogus product out there. We got the photos. We could lose it all as they come back and say, see? And Bill, to his great credit, said, yeah, that could happen. We could also prove that we won't stand for any shit on any fraudulent activity. And we stand by our seal for every grower that is paying their dues for us to do that. So we're going to file a complaint. And some of the board were nervous, and some of the farmers were, this is risky. But eventually, pretty much everybody agreed that, why are you getting certified if you're going to just let it go?
Welcome to the Real Organic Podcast. I'm Linley Dixon, co-director of the Real Organic Project. We're a grassroots, farmer-led movement with an add-on organic label that distinguishes crops grown in healthy soil and animals raised on pasture without synthetic fertilizers or toxic chemicals. You just heard from Bob Scowcroft, former head of CCOF and one of the most influential voices in the early organic movement. Bob shares the incredible story of the carrot caper, a case of organic fraud that could have derailed our movement, but instead helped shape the integrity behind the organic seal. He also walks us through the Alar crisis, Meryl Streep's unexpected role in sparking national awareness, and the farmer-led collaboration that ultimately led to the creation of the Organic Foods Production Act.
Welcome to the Real Organic Podcast. I'm talking today with Bob Scowcroft. Bob has been somebody I met long ago before Real Organic Project, when we were starting Keep the Soil Organic. And Bob became an early supporter of our mission, and we'll talk about that, Bob. Mm-hmm. But Bob, you have a long history with organic. Can you just I know we're going to have so much to talk about. We'll have to cut some parts out, but just how did you get here?
How did I get here? I would say that there's really two parts of my adulthood journey. The first part was off every grid imaginable, and traveler and adventurer. And the end of that run, I landed in Washington, D.C., and volunteered at a group called the Alaska Coalition, and to work to save Alaska. It was BLM land at that time, and they wanted to redefine the 100 million acres in the parks and wild rivers and wilderness. And I sat next to a gentleman named Eric Jansen, who worked for Friends of the Earth, and he was very militant, anti-Agent Orange, really, but other pesticides, other fungicides, he just would go after them day in and day out. And you kind of listen when you have sharing a door on sawhorses in the back of the Friends of the Earth office. I'm on Alaska and he's on pesticides. So after quite a period of time, I started to think about what he was talking about, and I didn't like the idea of 9,000 chemicals, and the Alaska legislation failed. And near the end of that journey, unbeknownst to me, Eric gave David Brower a $10,000 check and said, "This is the best organizer I've ever met." He was on it with the Alaska Coalition. He understood phone banks, he understood direct mail, had a good communications friendliness over the phone, and he should become Friends of the Earth's national organizer. And I was surprised. I hadn't asked. FO didn't have an open position. Brower was somewhat suspended at the time because he had spent too much money, and he took the $10,000 check, cashed it, put it in the FO bank, and told all the rest of the staff they had a new national organizer. Surprise, that was me.
That was you.
And people were rather upset, though I was friends with them, but they So I got the money, and they said, okay. And I said, well, I want to be the national organizer in San Francisco because I'm going back there with my girlfriend. And I have this project called the Store Network. I want to organize environmental businesses into different sectors into a environmental chamber of commerce, grassroots small businesses. I had started with Alaska already, and I had about 20 Alaska-centric, not on location, but rather interest outfitters that cared deeply about saving the state's wild lands. So I had that store network, and they do raffles and write letters. But I came out to California, and I said, well, it's time to turn to help Eric and his issues on spray drift and size of nozzle. I had no clue that spray nozzles were so important for drift. I learned. And why not reach out to some natural food stores to write letters on behalf of Friends of the Earth? And I started to do that. And a gentleman from the CCOF chapter in Marin area, Cy Weissman, wrote me and said, you would have to believe in reincarnation to stop and ban 9,000 chemicals. Why don't you just get rid of them all and start supporting organic farming and organic farmers? And we'd like you to come visit our chapter and actually meet organic farms, see organic farms and meet organic farmers. And so, well, that's kind of cool. And I always like to be out in the outdoors and visit farms. So I went to a chapter meeting, and that's all it took. It was like Stuart Fishman, who was with Rainbow Grocery at the time, and Cy said, convinced me that, I really needed to be in favor of organic. And the long, strange trip began from there.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you came in through the door of the environmental movement. I actually don't hear that much. And it's always been amazing to me that there isn't a more intimate connection between the organic movement and the environmental movement. I think there is in Europe, but I think that it, for reasons that evade me, there seems to be a greater distance here.
I think I have a lot of thoughts on that, and I happen to be writing about that on my own manuscript right now.
Yeah.
Almost immediately, I was invited to add Friends of the Earth's name to an initiative that Cy and others had started to make the California Health and Safety Code, the definition of organic, permanent. It had a sunset clause in it. It said it goes out of business if nobody uses it on their labels. And they wanted to say, hey, it's being used on the labels and it needs to be permanent for this state. And they went around to the environmental groups and all said, we don't even, what, organic? No, that's Birkenstocks and hippies. And no, we got enough trouble underway with Reagan anyways. Came to me and I said, well, that makes total sense. And I'll have this, I got the little store network and I'll get Brower and I'll put my name on a letter to support it. And very much to my surprise, David Brower said, no, Friends of the Earth cannot support organic legislation. We too are in enough trouble, and this is just too controversial, and it probably means marijuana, and let's just keep distance from it. Even then, being the person I am, so I don't buy that. I'm not, no, this is an environmental issue. And the board said, okay, we have the wife of one of our board members, Alan Gussow. She's a nutritionist. And let's write Joan and see what she thinks about whether FO should support the inclusion of your name and our name in their legislative activity up in Sacramento. And Joan wrote a 4-page letter back, deeply both academic and introspective, and said she's not sure, and probably not under the practices she knows at the moment, that organic would be more nutritious. Let's put that aside. But having a permanent organic label could someday create an alternative market to this agro-industrial complex. So for that reason alone, this is an environmental issue, and Friends of the Earth should support this.
Do you remember what year this was?
This was 81.
81.
No, sorry, late 79, early in 80.
Yeah, yeah.
So with that
Right.
in hand, I wrote it. It went forward. This local assemblyman who'd just been elected here, a guy named Sam Farr, picked up from Vic Fazio, picked up the initiative, and remarkably, really what it came down to was just removing the sunset clause, and 26569.11 became the regulation of the state,
Right.
which by and large meant if you wanted to sell into California, you had to put that health and safety code on your product. So
If you were going to call it organic.
in order to call it organic, you had to say grown under the health and safety code.
Is that true for the people in California who are producing also?
Well, that was the law for
That was
people
the
in
law.
California, but the very few processors, juicers, what few products came into the state
Yeah.
also had to say that. If they wanted to call their rice cakes, their cereal, their canned tomato paste
Yeah.
organic, they had to say grown under the health and safety code.
So I know there's a spirited debate among friends about what state had the first organic standards, in Maine and California dispute that, but I think there's no dispute that California were the first government standards to define organic.
I think Oregon and Maine had the first regulations,
Oh, they did?
and California had the first law.
Okay.
There's a big difference between a regulation promulgated in a department and a voted upon law of the land.
Okay.
So
What was the impact on California organic agriculture to have that law?
It allowed the distributors and wholesalers to begin to offer product out of state. So you wanted to sell organic into Las Vegas. You said, hey, look, mine's under the state law, health and safety code,
Right.
labeled accordingly.
We have standards.
And-
There are legal consequences for breaking those standards.
Well, that came next down the road. But yes, there wasn't any enforcement in the law,
Okay.
but they articulated a simplistic manner within which to claim, hey, that's not organic, and we complain.
Yeah.
And the local local health department, a key component of that, because the California State Department of Agriculture, I want nothing to do with it. No way, we are not going to oversee it. And by and large, most of the organic farmers at that time said, back at you.
Yeah.
We don't want to have anything to do with CDFA.
Right.
You guys are out there promoting this chemical and that chemical and not helping us and hindering us.
Right.
Every time we complain about spray drift or it's not a problem. What's your issue?
Yeah.
So it took quite a while for these organic farmers and the state to come to the point where it was now more of a business, and there was a very offensive violation of the health and safety code, and that law with enforcement needed to be rewritten, and a complaint system and financial, if not criminal, components would be added to it. And that was in 88 and 89.
Okay. So tell me for yourself, you had just brokered, been part of a conversation to bring together Friends of the Earth, a large environmental organization, and organic in California, or organic as a concept, that there should be mutual support there,
Mm-hmm.
which is so obvious, but it wasn't obvious at the time.
No environmental group had, that I knew of in 89 There might be, maybe CSPI, Center for Science and Public Interest, would dispute that a little bit because they had added Roger Blowbaum on staff, but no national environmental group that I know of had an agriculture desk at all.
Yeah.
At all.
At all.
They had environment and very active, and a few of them were concerned about DDT and methyl bromide.
Yeah.
But none of them had made the connection for any alternative production systems that could be presented as a solution to these problems. Just ban this, ban that.
At that time, organic, which in America had grown really out of this counterculture movement. It was a bunch of hippies. And
we wore Birkenstocks too.
We wore Birkenstocks, right? And I mean, I'm sure that there were some fundamentalist Christians also participating, but the mass of the movement was this counterculture, and it as organic had been. When did Rodale bring concept of organic and start the magazine? That was in the 50s.
Yeah.
But it didn't really explode until Vietnam and the response to Vietnam.
That was, it was Rodale who sent their Western ad buyer, I've got his full, Floyd, to go organize California farmers to start a group in '73. It was Rodale's, because they wanted to start New Farm magazine and have that as a farming organic thread, organic gardening since the late 40s or early 50s, but they wanted a farm magazine. So they said, well, if we want one, we got to start it ourselves.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the historic founding of it. But you had, like the Lundbergs from the 40s and 50s. You had the Amish.
The Lundbergs were already doing organic farming in the 40s and 50s?
One of the brothers, I still remember a wild party in my college rental where we all were excited. We had Lundberg organic rice in 1970.
Yeah.
No law, no nothing. They just called it organic.
Yeah.
And how they farmed. But the hipsters brought a back to the land movement to it, but the spirituality probably came as much from Whole Earth Catalog, some of the other original publications that offered tools that eventually became a system. And I don't think, for me personally, having the green light to sign on to that one piece of legislation was like, not to overquote a Grateful Dead song, but the bus came by and I just got on it. Okay, now I guess I'm an organic spokesperson for this one law. I've never farmed. I, at the time, couldn't tell you exactly about soil fertility or pest management. I heard the words, but I had a group of retailers that were hungry for information, that were natural food stores that were selling organic. They weren't sure if it was or not. They had relationships with local farmers they were sure about. And here was this national environmental group with the arch druid himself, David Brower, saying, organic's now part of our portfolio. So I got invited to the second eco farm to speak with Bob Rodale and Wes Jackson and Garth Youngberg. Yeah. And at the time, I knew Rodale was a rather towering figure, but Wes was just another writer attempting to get a book published.
This was Bob Rodale.
Bob Rodale. Yeah. Thank you. Wes had a manuscript in front of Brower called New Roots for Agriculture, and he wanted to get that published under FOE. So Garth had just written the Organic Task Force report.
Yes.
So this
is 1981. 81. So the
I was the second,
came out in 80. Yeah.
Second or third eco farm. I was the keynote.
Yeah.
To talk about organic as a solution, and we as an environmental group would lead the way.
That's so interesting. So at that point, the focus, your focus, was organic as an alternative system to chemical pesticides, chemical fertilizers. There is another way. It wasn't, I'm hearing, so focused on soil fertility and all of that Albert Howard, Eve Balfour stuff. It was really coming from an environmental perspective of, we're poisoning ourselves. What can we do to stop this? More of a Silent Spring perspective.
Intensely alternative system.
Yeah.
I didn't know the planks of it, the pieces of it, but I knew that something needed to be entirely different in order to get off this treadmill. Eco Farm, particularly Rodale, led to an invitation to speak at the first cornucopia conference in Emmaus, Pennsylvania, and to talk about this store network. Just about everybody was enamored with the idea of organizing small businesses to be pro-environment. And come out and talk about it. How did you do it? What do you see the resources? What do you? And I said, basically, I see myself as a networker. I'm not never a farmer. That became very repetitious over the years. But I know good ones, and when I see them and hear them, and I know small businesses trying to differentiate themselves in a town of supermarkets. And I can provide the material, the information, the network. And I think one of the things I'm rather proud of is the gift of gab and the superficial soundbite. Somehow I'm able to give 2 sentences to a reporter or a TV interview that encapsulates what they want to get out of their 60-second piece. So from there, Cornucopia Conference led to another vehicle coming by that I jumped on, and that was the way they did breakout groups in 82, I think, 81, 82, was they said, okay, Lehigh Valley, we want to be local, use 700 people, can break out different ways. Lehigh is this one here, West Coast is here, New England is here. Well, West Coast had 5 people. Lehigh had 600 and something. Sort of classic Rodale moment. And my group was Seago Jackson from Tilth, and Garth Youngberg just came along, Lynn Cootie from Oregon Tilth, and me, and Garth's another person with Garth. So the 5 of us said, what are we going to do to change things? And so I said, well, the task force, well, how about legislation? How about we get organic research? Because you called for it, it's there. It's very easy to transfer it. And Lynn said, well, oh no, there was one other person in the circle. God, I forgot about him. Peter DeFazio was there, sent from Weaver's office. Jim Weaver was congressman from Oregon, and he was interested in organic.
Peter was not yet.
He was just a lower level aide, actually.
Yeah.
And he said, well, hey, we can introduce something, and Lynn and Gar, so we can write a draft. And I said, well, I got now 300 stores that would put up a poster saying, we want the Organic Research Act. And so
those 300 stores were all in California?
Country.
The whole country?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is really interesting. At this point, did you feel very much that you were part of a movement? Were you excited as a group? Did you go, something is happening here?
I come from the anti-war streets. This was no doubt a movement. It was counter to just about everything that industrial supermarket, control of the food system, cheaper, any chemical, any time. And I was saying, nah, none of it.
Yeah.
I want something entirely different.
Yes. Okay.
So there was definitely in my mind.
There was a like-minded group, and you felt you were building something together.
I'm at home.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it felt really wonderful. All good people.
Yeah.
And there it was. So, now we had a piece of legislation. Now we introduced it. All of a sudden, I was walking the Hill for Friends of the Earth. Parallel to that, I was going to the Natural Foods Expo, which I had stumbled into again around 1980, 81. Convinced the owner of it, Doug Green, give me a card table in front of the entrance to just hand out, pro-organic and anti-pesticide brochures. And pretty overwhelmed. I was the only one there with a nonprofit table. And he liked it, they liked it, and they said, well, you should be inside and have it. We'll just give you, we don't really have a protocol here, but we'll call you a nonprofit booth.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens.
Was Expo a big deal at that point already?
It's the only deal.
It was the only deal, but a lot of people were coming to it?
Relatively speaking, yeah.
Yeah.
There was definitely a thread of survival to all of this. That $10,000 check, the handshake agreement was, when it was gone, I was gone. No problem. Never had a real job before like that. I excelled at selling earth shoes for a couple of months, but then even after a couple of months, that was that. But I had the agreement was, if I brought in brand new money that was identifiable clearly from my work, that would be added to my so-called restricted account. And they said, well, that's cool. You're doing good stuff. Your name's out there. And if people, every brochure we handed out had a coupon on it. So every once in a while I'd run a $35 membership to Friends of the Earth. Add it, Peggy,
Yeah.
Add it to the pool. And when the first year was up, they said, yeah, God, you've actually brought in a bunch of members and got our name out there really well. And we wrote a little proposal for you and got some money for you to do a poster. So, okay, another year. Mm. And that was the first expo. And I went down there. I got $7,000 a year. They took the other $3,000 for overhead, every expense. But I went down there and came back with about $3,500 in 3 days of 5s and 20s, a couple of $100 checks, 7 more memberships. And they said, I said, half year, yeah, we'll get rid of that. You're here.
Okay.
This is good. And as a matter of fact, we have all these chapters out there that don't really talk to each other and are not coordinators. So since you're a national organizer, you're also going to work with our 20 chapters and add those to your portfolio so that they all start talking to each other and know what the organization's working on and can offer any expertise that we could use in the grassroots. So now I had 20 individuals, each with 3 to 40 people in Moab, Utah, or in Philadelphia, or as a Friends of the Earth chapter.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun, but very different.
It sounds like you had I don't know if it was natural or if it was acquired, but you had a skill set of organizing.
Yeah, from day one.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to go to the commune here, but I would organize things there as well, cleanups and parties. And, I never desired to be the director or the face of anti-war work or other activities during the communal years, but I always desired to be part of it. And I think, in retrospect, I listened really well, and I learned really well, and I was able to either replicate what I had learned when asked a question by someone else, or if I couldn't answer that question, I knew who could and could deliver that connection right away. And that served me really well over a long time. One side story.
Yes.
I'm not sure. I still have to think. I won't say her name, although you could actually find it if you were due diligence. But the store network really became kind of a cool thing. And a woman who I knew who was connected to the Sierra Club started a business network throughout the Sierras as a means within which to kind of save the Sierra lands and stop the clear cutting. And she brought in, the businesses, a casino, a progressive timber company, small stores, and kind of a business for the Sierras. And I'll be danged, she got $600,000 McCarthy Genius Award for doing that. And she sort of said, well, you were, and I was like, hey, what is happening here? And we both chuckled. He said, well, you were yeah, I watched and learned. This is, but it's totally different, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
It is, it was, is, and I just chuckle about it these days because for a while, my buddies, we'd all go to each other saying, did you make it this year? Did you make it this year? And laugh at each other and then rock on. So.
Okay, so you went to Expo West and something happened there. People started to, were they talking about organic at that point at Expo West?
A couple of key people were.
Yeah.
84, there was a carrot controversy, and led by Stuart Fishman, Rainbow Grocery, and just a couple of other stores said, this guy's expletive fraudulent. Why are you people buying it? Why are you distributors distributing it? This is not right. And people said, there's no law, there's no enforcement, there's no protocol, and my customers demand carrots. And yeah, I feel kind of squiggly about it, but I don't know. And the Natural Foods merchandiser had a writer who then wrote up the story and said, hey, controversy about these carrots. And people then backed off, and there was never any resolution of it. But the fact that a light had been shined on the possibility that something claiming to be organic under this health and safety code might not be caught more people's attention.
Yeah.
And 3 years later, of course, we had the national carrot caper crisis that sort of set a whole new level of attention and awareness. And
so what was the national carrot caper?
National carrot caper. So leaping forward, we had now we had presence in. Hold that thought for a second. I want to point out one other really interesting event. In the early 80s, of course, Alice Waters and Chez Panisse made national news again and again as a remarkable restaurant serving local organic farmers food and winning awards. Alice, in her creative brilliance, sort of oversaw a woman named Sabella Krause's idea and then plan to hold a tasting of summer produce at the Oakland Museum. And people are like, what? A museum having fresh produce to taste in tables? What? In the museum, Oakland was very, very innovative, far more so than San Francisco. And I said, yeah, this is part of our hood and our restaurants and taste. And we should introduce this. It's a great opportunity to be really different. The first year was closed to the local population, but Alice just invited 110 chefs came around the country who had a chance to meet with each other, tasted this produce that they, by and large, couldn't get in their communities. The New England chefs were like, yeah, we got this there too. You know, I mean, there was perfect chef attitude on one level, but on another, it was really a celebration of the freshest produce and food that had ever been tasted in these 30 farmers' tables. And then they had 6 speakers. And I was one of the 6. Jim Hightower, me, and Don Villarrejo did the first on labor, farm worker organizing. Jim, just being Jim Hightower in Texas, and me on the store network. And of course, that, as a listener, introduced me to farm workers via Rejo, the integration that should happen among farmers and labor that I hadn't thought about.
What year was this?
That was also in 82, I
Yeah.
think. So from there now, going fast forward, you had tens, if not hundreds of chefs that looked around their communities for making connections with local farmers, that bringing it in fresh and taste was a component of their higher end meals. And you had activists who had been introduced to siloed constituencies that just hadn't thought about that much. You know, we either didn't have the time, or we were so focused on stopping pesticides or growing organic, so on and so forth.
Those 30 farms that were giving tastings, were most of those organic?
I think 24 of the 30.
Yeah.
Alice is pretty intense about that at the time.
So it's interesting to me because from a distance, it looks like all these things were just spontaneously happening around the country, which they were, and around the world. But you see that certain events are very provocative, that they really, I mean, what a brilliant thing to bring chefs together from around the country, have them taste this and have a conversation where they all go, we should do this too.
You know, I didn't know much about, I had met Enid, Mofka, you know, I knew of these groups even through Friends of the Earth, but it seemed so remote. It seemed very localized. It seemed very, I don't have the exact, a little bit of an attitude, you know, California, you guys are so big and you're blowing us, you know, we're not all that happy with you folks.
Oh, they had an attitude about California.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Enid Wanacott you were talking about. Well, yeah, no, she was my good friend, and you know, but so when you would get together with them, I'm fascinated by this because I can tell you my attitude towards California, but you were experiencing at that point a little bit of othering from the rest of the country about California.
Yeah, I mean, you could throw in, there's a whole tale of how the Oregon Tilth and Washington Tilth and CCOF got together, the Western Alliance of Certification Organizations, to begin the standardization process when we wrote the state, we now being CCOF, wrote the state law. And we called ourselves WACO. It was the perfect acronym. And as we got out and about to other certifier groups or family farm or organic farm advocacy groups, there was almost an obligatory, you guys, never said gals, you know, you guys kill us sometimes of the year, you know, you're so big, and you have so much product, and the distributors are growing and linking up with out here, and some of our distributors can't compete with your distributors. And then I know, it's just, you know, we're big, and some of our farms are now 100 acres. And of course, later on, some of our farms are 1,000 acres.
Right.
And later on, some of our farms
vegetables,
are 30,000
yeah,
acres.
Right.
So, and we didn't, at CCOF in any case, we didn't, size and scale was not in we had no limits. We wanted people to go organic. But I'll leap it back into the carrot caper.
Yeah.
So in 87, I was just hired as CCOF's ED. I'd spent about a year, almost 2 years, in emergency family mode to get a job that had health insurance that covered our son's special needs. Just, you know, for the record, whether it's in it or not, but I was a secretary up at UC putting yellow forms into blue folders for 2 years, just about speaking in tongue by the time I was done.
In order to have benefits
only
to cover your family,
to cover that. It was just, that was what was
you had
necessary.
to do, yeah.
You had to do it. But then the CCOF job came open and I applied and got it. And God, what a run. So about a year into that.
Excuse me, were you the first executive director? So before that, it was mostly volunteer. How did it work before that?
It was claimed to be founded in '73, and there were a couple of chapters that Rodale really helped facilitate. In '75 or '6, they decided they rewrote bylaws, decided to be a statewide group of chapters that Barney Brickmont, a volunteer in Santa Cruz, would oversee. And Barney ran it for 12 years from his kitchen table with a budget of about $6,000 or $7,000 a year. And it was all volunteer. In '85, they hired Mark Lipson and Phil McGee and Brandon to do all part or less than part-time to kind of bring this together and get same forms in each chapter and the same simple materials list. But Barney, it just wasn't happening. And I met Barney at Eco Farm, and I said, Barney, someday I want to be CCOF. And he said, Bob, this is never going to happen. This is anarchist like farmers or Chabber regionalists or sub-regionalists, and they disagree on this, but they all send in their forms, but it's just not going to happen. Yeah. And Warren Weber then ran for president of CCOF in '85 and said it would take a 3-year term, and when he left, CCOF would be a professional nonprofit organization who would have professional staff, who would have coordinate, facilitate the same inspection, data monitoring, transparency across the board for all organic farmers that wish to join CCOF.
Yeah.
You didn't have to, there's nothing mandatory, but he wanted to leave it with a professional staff.
And it changed under his tenure?
He got Mark and Phil to be part-time his
Yeah.
first year there. And then he kept, the bylaws, this and that, and then they did a hiring announcement. I applied.
Okay.
And
so you started that in '87?
Yeah, I think the so-called first date was Jan 1, '88, but I started sneaking over there in '87, and it was just so high, so happy. I'd known Barney. I'd been to Eco Farm now for 7 years through my faux work. I even went during my secretary stuff because I needed that space for dancing and hugging and good vibes. And,
yeah.
And everything was as I had hoped it would be, with one exception. And that was Mark pulled me aside. And this is advice for anybody who ever applies for a job, even to this day. Look at the books. Check the financials. He pulled me aside.
Oh, by the way, we're broke.
Capital B, ROKE. Well, we got money for January and February's rent. We sort of been paid. It's not both of Phil. I mean, we're okay, in good shape now. But and I'm farming at Molino, but we're broke.
Yeah.
And the system of certification and renewals doesn't really engage until March or April, and we don't have anything past January. And by the way, in addition to being broke, we only filed one tax return to the state of California in 1985. So we have been in existence since '73. It's about to be '88. And upon due diligence, if you have sort of a 3-year window from the first time you appear on either state or federal IRS nonprofit landscape. So you have till April to file 15 years, maybe this, maybe that.
Yeah.
Son of a bitch. Okay, what do I do and how do I do it? And there's longer tales on how we pulled it all off, thanks to one incredibly helpful IRS agent, thanks to a special appeal, thanks to an attorney in town that got us up and rolling. And of course, the comedic component of that is the Grateful Dead gave us $10,000.
Oh, God bless them.
And thanks, through a connection of Mark's.
Yeah.
And they gave that through Eco Farm.
Yeah.
So that we got $9,000 to pay everybody off, pay the attorney, and file 3 years worth of state and federal tax returns. And then we got fined, and I protested that fine, and we got that back too.
Yeah.
So
at that point in '88, how many farms were being certified by CCOF? There was a certification program.
Absolutely, in 170.
170.
About when I got there.
Yeah.
So we're rolling along. Warren has left. A new president named Bill Bramer comes on in March.
I interviewed Warren.
Yeah, Warren's a gem.
Yeah. Yeah, he's great.
I'm out of touch with him right now, but I hope to get back to him soon. Somewhere in that spring, summer, among everything going on, we had word that the market was flooded with organic carrots. And there was only one organic carrot grower that was large enough to cover most of the market. Danny Duncan and Cal Organic now were really very large. And he had a brilliant quilt approach to farming. So he pretty much always had 40, 60 acres of through 1,000 with maybe 30 or 40 different vegetables and cover crops and 2-year soil rest, for want of a non-technical farm word. But he always had carrots moving through that and sold a lot of them, got a really good price. And he was in a 2-month window of not having any carrots. They were planted, but they weren't ready yet. And here they all came in. And people said, this can't be. And one distributor said, I'm going to go check it out. And she went down there and said, I want to write a story about all your carrots and how great you are. And the guy, foolishly, I suppose, gave her a tour of his packing house. And she interviewed him and took photos of the Mexican carrots coming in and being unloaded and unbagged and rebagged into an organic bag. And he said, no, they're organic from them. We just need to, so on and so forth. So she came back to me and Bill Bramer and said, okay, this guy is fraudulently upfront cheating. What do we do? And we went to the board and said, this is real risk. We could just really prove, and the conventional industry was starting to get concerned about organic. We could prove that there's bogus product out there. We got the photos. We could lose it all as they come back and say, see? And Bill, to his great credit, said, yeah, that could happen. We could also prove that we won't stand for any shit on any fraudulent activity. And we stand by our seal for every grower that is paying their dues for us to do that. So we're going to file a complaint. And some of the board were nervous and some of the farmers were, this is risky. But eventually pretty much everybody agreed that, why are you getting certified if you're going to just let it go? So the board voted to hire an attorney. The board voted for Bill to be the farmer voice and for me to be the public face and spokesperson. And by then I had quite a bit of experience with the press and went to a reporter that I'd gotten pretty close to at the San Jose Mercury News. I worked with him on the medfly spray issues. And I said, Mitchell, I got your cover, front page story here. There's this, there's that. I even have photos. This is going on. And he did some work and said, yeah, you got one. And gave him the photos. And the night before they ran the story, the editor of the Mercury said, how come you haven't identified the person who took the photos? How you can't just, you need to know it, Mitchell. You can't just say leaked by an anonymous person. So I went to the woman who took them and said, okay, we're quandary. This is sort of it. Will you allow me to give your name and phone number to Mitchell as the source? And he will, by our handshake, say, it's been delivered by, and we've granted anonymous stuff, but we know who it is and we have the photos. She was pretty not wanting to do that. But at 10 at night, she called back and said, what am I in this industry for myself? Yeah, go ahead and give it to him. And I called them then, and those days they ran it the next morning. And that went national. Eventually, I gave over 100 interviews on the carrot caper. The state would not enforce it until we sued them, threatened to sue them, and they went down there. And a guy hand wrote a paper saying, no, he's all right. The local guy who knew nothing about organic, he showed me this and he showed me that, and yeah. He should not have given it to Mitchell, the reporter, who said the state claims it's all right. He should have given it to the State Department. So the local inspector blew his job. The state was fundamentally embarrassed and sent a state reinspection down there and caught him and fined him. Eventually discovered that he had previous felonies on fraudulent activities as a USDA employee a decade before. And that story had long legs to it. to some extent it still does to this day, but CCOF did a great job, and everybody stood up for the seal and the certification and for the truth behind organic. Yeah. Mind you, this was happening when another friend from NRDC called me and said, "Hey, we got this report on 20 chemicals, and we are going to release it, and it's pretty damaging, and it's all peer review." And we gave it to Ed Bradley at CBS 60 Minutes, and he's going to do this report, and we want to prepare for response. And you're the guy we know the best from previous work together, and we want to say that sustainable agriculture is the way to go. And I said, nah, not at this point. You got to say organic is the way to go. Certified organic is the way to go. Oh no, we don't have anybody that knows anything about that. We don't, we're not prepared to defend organic. That puts us in a different light, and we're not sure, so we're going to do this, but we'll send you an advanced copy of the report and our press releases, and keep an eye on 60 Minutes, 2 weeks from now. Yeah. And it was called Alar. So we had that catching some attention in our office, but not nuclear. And we're still dealing with the state and fraudulent activity. Now we have Alar and national concerns about chemicals. And that became a sort of a panic. Apple boxes, $70 a box, and so on and so forth. And NRDC still wouldn't say it, but Wendy Gordon and her co-founder Meryl Streep said they wanted to talk more about sustainable and even organic. And so I briefed them on what CCOF was all about. And still it was pretty low key, particularly in hindsight, it was pretty low key. And Meryl went on the Donahue show and said, well, your students tell me about Alar and so on. What about you? What food do you give your kids? And she just smiled and looked at him and said, I've been feeding them certified organic produce, most of their lives. And so we get it in the neighborhood in Connecticut and Massachusetts, and it's really the only way to feed your kids. We had one phone at the time, and I think we broke the AT&T phone with what happened after her presentation. We got over 300 requests of farmers to join CCOF from around the country, but we would only take Californians.
So that's so interesting. So the Alar report was a big deal, but it was Meryl Streep's response to the Alar report that kind of blew it up.
Yes.
Wow.
Orders of magnitude. You had a little component about somebody had injected a couple of grapes with cyanide about 2 weeks after Alar. So what happened was they quickly put that was an idiot, or somebody wanted to do this, or a competitor. But what that became was food safety. So you had, global food coming into the U.S. I didn't know that. Chilean grapes, why? How? I didn't know that. How safe is my food? There's 19 other chemicals that NRDC wrote about, because they were still pounding their report.
Yeah.
So
that kind of changed the world, that moment.
It did.
It changed yours, but it changed a lot of people's world. And I think that Ronnie and Arnie Koss started Earth's Best Baby Food, and they ran out of money at some point, and they had to sell the company, and it went to become something quite different. But they said, we were just like 1 year too early. And if Alar had happened a year earlier, we'd still have the company.
Yeah, they sold it to Baccaris Capital, which is
and it went on to
Menlo Park.
Yeah, it went on.
And it went to permutations.
To many big owners. It's just quite a different company. They were, I'm sure you know them, they're special people.
I've met them over time, but I wouldn't say I know them. So.
Well, they're fantastic, yeah. Okay.
So this is a wild couple of years.
Yeah.
because then carrots, Western Alliance, we decided, we being the 3 states, we wanted to encourage interstate commerce. So CCOF had a 1-year transition, and the other state, Oregon and Washington, had 3. And so we decided to have 3 years for everybody with a background testing. It's conceivable you could bring in a parcel that had been fallow for 5 years, double check it, and then throw it into organic production. But Oregon Tilth took sort of the lead on the materials list, and we shared really well. And as we move forward, then Ohio's OCIA said, well, we have extra standards, but we want to certify California certified organic with our additional standards. And there's a dicey period of time, and Russell and Mofka in particular said, well, we've got a regulation here first, and you guys, we kind of like what we're doing here, but we're starting to see California, so maybe we should have kind of a national meeting to figure out what's going on.
Right.
And
Russell Libby from Mofka.
From Mofka.
Yeah.
Poet. Fantastic poet.
Yeah, fantastic person.
So what happened was Roger Blowbaum had started up at Center for Science and the Public Interest, and he decided they were having a anti-pesticide and pro-organic. They were going to take on organic since nobody else had on the Hill. And so Roger helped host 20 or 30 certification representatives to meet in DC to address the question that this, at the time, sort of junior staffer out of this Vermont senator's office, Kathleen and Leahy, do we really want this? Leahy had asked, I think pretty much at Enid's request, or Vermont NOFA's request, who's doing organic regulations and certification out there, and how similar are they? And so Leahy assigned Kathleen to write a paper and report about it and see if there was a core agreement of verification that could be captured into a national law.
And did it appear that there was a core agreement? Because I would have thought there was.
I want to say absolutely yes, but the nattering nabobs of perfection and purity would probably not say the same thing.
That there were differences.
Yeah, and our standards are better then.
I understand.
So
but
they weren't necessarily going to agree to all the common ground unless and until their particular fill-in-the-blank section, paragraph, product. I mean, we couldn't certify livestock in California.
Because?
I had a hilarious moment. I had a movement moment when the Animal Meat Inspection Service armed inspector came into the CCOF office and said, "Who's in charge here?" We saw a poster for certified organic beef in Mendocino, and that's illegal. We're the only ones that give out labels. It's called Prime, and whatever the other meat labels are. I don't. And so this is a felony, and you're running an organization that is doing felony work, and I'm considering arresting you. What do you say to that? And it's just not. Judy didn't think it was funny when I came home and told her. I had a movement, Arlo Guthrie type movement of, we were very close to the NBC local affiliate. And so I said, Karen, call, I can't remember his name, KSBW, and tell him to get over here right away. And I want to be filmed being arrested by a federal meat inspector for certifying organic beef, grass-fed beef. He got really pissed. And Karen's like, yes, do it, call him. He's a good guy. He knows the story when he sees it, and this will be a good one.
This was in front of the meat inspector.
Yeah, he was getting red in the face and really upset. And where that came from, I'm not a very courageous person in that kind of, it was just a spontaneous, this one really, Arlo Guthrie got busted for throwing trash and made a career out of it. I'm going to get busted for verifying, my team verifying, righteous beef product for those that eat meat.
Yeah.
So he, Karen called him, and he just didn't know what to do. And finally, with some bad language, said, well, I'll get you one way or another. Got in his car and drove to Mendocino and went to that ranch and told them they would be arrested for felony use of illegal labels on their beef. And then he went to 2 stores who had their label and new marketing campaign about their organic grass-fed beef and threatened them as well. And that threw them out of the program. They just thought, we're not going to call it organic under these situations and circumstances.
Yeah.
It pisses me off to this day.
Yeah.
So
You had to wait for the federal law to be able to change that.
Well, 36 years for meat standards, but meat labeling standards. But yeah, the federal law needed to be codified, and that was just one of many examples of different agencies and different individuals in those agencies taking, quote, initiative, unquote, on their own.
Yeah.
So that's Kathleen wrote her paper and report and said, yeah, it's pretty close. There's some of these issues, some of that, and transition time, soil testing, pesticide testing, what to do if it drifts. She came up with, there were good ones.
Yeah. And
Kathleen likes to tell the story that she'd finished this report. We both tell the same story at the same time. Mark's going to DC. He's going to go look up Kathleen, see what she's got. Let's see what she has to say. But don't say anything about national law rules until, we confer at least with WACO and then some of the other groups that we're talking to. And then you cut to the chase with Kathleen with a big smile saying, Mark Lipson walked into my office and said, we need a national law. So there might have been some initiative there on somebody's part.
Yeah.
But she says that kicked it off. She went back to the senator saying, yeah, we need one. It's time.
And do you know what year that was?
89.
That was 89. So she went right to work.
Yep.
And it took a year to get that, to create a law and then get it passed?
Yeah, wasn't that hard. I remember they had one hearing in the Senate under Harkin. I think he was the chair of the Ag Committee. And no, was Leahy the chair then? I'm not sure. It might have been under Leahy, but what was really cool was now about 8 or 10 of us were there. Michael Sly was there and some of the others, Fred probably, sitting in the small hearing room, and they had testimony, and everybody was kind of, there were 2 senators and kind of nodding, okay. And then Senator Cranston came in, and both Leahy, and he's number 2 at the time, and literally said, Senator Cranston, nice to see you. What are you doing here? And he said, well, I saw this on my staff alerted me to this, saw this, and I've been on an organic farm at UC Santa Cruz in California, thanks to Bob and CCOF, and there are hearings for this law, and I'm very impressed what the university's doing, what CCOF's doing, so I thought I'd come in and listen to the testimony and let you know that I support this. Number 2 in the Senate, what are you going to do after that? So it was very powerful, very important. And it ended up being the only hearing held. Peter ran the show on the House side. Stenholm said he would never allow an organic law to pass through the Ag Committee, wouldn't hold hearings. He didn't, he wouldn't. And Peter amended the Farm Bill on the floor, and it won 196 to 188.
So it never came through committee. It just went straight to the Farm
floor,
Bill.
Straight to an amendment. And I have the tape of C-SPAN of that, which was really cool to watch to this day.
Yeah.
And I have the piles Your timing is good because I've been thinking about this and pulling out some of the papers that I showed you. But,
Yeah.
But how every vote went, and
there was opposition.
well, totally in the conventional, the Stenholms of the world and the big produce, corn growers, soy. There was already an understanding, or at least a sense of concern that this might be a problem here. This might be sort of an alternative, a competitive system against everything we've built up. And that somewhat inarticulate, is that the word I want? They didn't pound tables saying that, but this is a chance to stop it right now.
Right. It was still very, it was not very big yet.
Yeah, there were certain regions now that had some attention. So some of the natural food stores were growing. The co-ops were not working well, but the for-profit components that came out of some of them did well. The trade, the conventional trade, was very concerned about the system. The apple growers were apoplectic. The Apple Commission sued Meryl Streep personally. The Washington State Apple Growers Association sued Meryl Streep and Mothers and Others personally.
They also sued 60 Minutes, I
and
believe,
60
CBS,
Minutes as well. Not us, thank goodness. And now you had, an initiative that was going to actually define this term, that would have penalties if you broke this term's protocol, and it was national in scope.
So, Bob, tell me, from your perspective, what was the impact of having the Organic Food Production Act pass? And a lot has happened since then. Obviously, organic has gotten much, much bigger. But I will say at the time, I was not a fan. I thought the USDA will screw this up, as they have, they were not on our side. And they were not on our side. But I've decided about 5 times since then, well, I was wrong, and then I decided I was right, and then I decided I was wrong. But obviously, this was very powerful, and a lot of good came of it. So can you tell me why it was powerful? Do you have a sense of what?
The movement ended.
The movement ended.
And that was very powerful in that an alternative business community grew. I believe it would have ended anyway through fraud and greed. Not that both of those have gone away entirely, but we had, in my mind, almost no choice but to come together from our oases and our retreats in our communities to stand up on a national level and say, this is what we do. This is what's so different about as compared to what they do. And it's based on, by and large, soil. And it's the soil that keeps our farms alive and, if managed appropriately, will provide a livelihood. And there are many circles around that centerpiece of pest management and water and, by goodness, farmers markets. When I got to Friends of the Earth, farmers markets were illegal in California.
Illegal?
Yeah. Yeah, I have another pile of letters from the guy that went to Jerry Brown saying, this is really messed up. I can't have 10 farmers come to the local town square because it's illegal. And he fought and got legislation to allow the first farmers markets in the state. Because the Neanderthals were worried about people picking up an apple, walking around a downtown park and putting it in a bag and taking it away, sanitary standards and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So what you just said is very powerful to me. You said this is what this law meant, and at the same time you said something else that's very powerful, which is the movement ended. And I experienced that in Vermont. I'd been an organic farmer for a long time by then, and the first thing that was so obvious is the annual meeting that Vermont organic farmers had, where we would vote on any changes to the standards. And we all went to it. Everybody came, we brought our little bag lunch, and we spent this one day of the year talking to each other, and we voted, and sometimes they were contested votes, sometimes they were not happy, but we did it together, and we knew that we had this responsibility. And after that, it wasn't up to us what the standards were. And we stopped meeting like that. We still had annual meetings, but everybody didn't come. And we started to realize, well, I don't really need to go because we're not deciding anything. We don't have any authority in this. And in retrospect, I go, well, that is, just as you say, that was for me too, a transition. Not that I gave up on the movement, but I was struggling to make a business that would work. I was struggling to take care of my family, provide a home, all of those things. Is that inevitable? That is it just one or the other? Is that the deal?
Well, I think I said from not exactly say the age, but I'm in my 70s. I knew a movement. It was anti-war. It was peace. It was against the whole freaking regime. That was the movement. It was very powerful. And eventually we played a smaller role and we did stop the war. That movement ended. And now what? You know, some of the bands went back to the land. We did this, we did that, and we evolved into something else. Well, those of us found an evolutionary track towards environmental activism, and we brought our anti-war experiences to environmental. We had James Watt, for Christ's sake, you know. We had Reagan, seen one redwood, you've seen them all. So we had experienced in the channeling of passion, and we did it, some new people, some young people, some peers. We did it in the form of organic advocacy. Eventually that became, I think overall, it became another victory. That movement became an alternative, entire alternative system against the status quo. The challenge since then is that you articulated the group of 50. Is it exclusive? Is it everybody knows each other? Is it hard to get the 51st person there to come say, I want to be part of the club? Well, you weren't here in the last 8 years. Hard to tell. But in my mind, the objective of building the sense of community around not just the word organic, I think that's a centerpiece, but I think the sense of community could be on, I'm not sure it's a movement per se, but I think it's the DEI inclusionary importance of our organic movement, our labor awareness and training and growth and embrace as part of an organic community. I think we're going to be experimenting with cooperation more in this particular political environment these days. So I don't, again, at my age, it's for my kids and my grandkids to worry about concentration, which is a worry today and will get, I think, worse before it collapses on itself. But I want community. I want to make sure that there's a potluck There's what do you think about this? The joy of a grandchild now becoming part of Full Belly. The generations continuing to move forward. So yes, that movement that we jumped into, I think, is over, but it doesn't mean by any means that our work should stop. We just have to learn from it and continue the journey and find the areas where we can make a difference.
Okay.
That was a bit of a babble.
No. It's such an important conversation. It's not some intellectual sideshow. There's real question. I consider the work of the Real Organic to be to reinvigorate the movement, because I don't think the work is over. I don't think it's over.
I've tried to keep my distance from just about everybody for family life and personal challenges. Eco-Farm's my regeneration every year. Farm Aid was my regeneration every year, in part because I met advocacy groups that I'd never heard of. I didn't know contract poultry had nothing to do with organic, never until I went to Farm Aid. And I miss Farm Aid, but Carolyn and Linley are gone now too, so it is what it is. But Eco-Farm every year, I just joy of 4 days of a break, and what are kids thinking, what are elders thinking, dancing, new ideas. The arrival of the Native American community to organic is new and invigorating, and their practices and the not intentional, but maybe in some cases, lack of inclusion and lack of reaching out to the different approaches to agriculture that Native Americans have around their sovereign tribes. We know very little about that, and we've done a rather poor job collectively of learning and embracing and engaging. 2 years ago, there were 6 Native American panels at Eco-Farm. It was fantastic, it's about time. So to me, it's the community thread that needs more work. It's the young researchers that need social engagement, and the social engagers need more research, cross-pollination. I'm pretty enamored with that. Keep an eye on that. And Real Organic. I've tried to keep distance just out of, I can't get into I have my hydroponic is not organic. It's the only time I've submitted testimony to all this stuff for decades. Like, this is bullshit, guys. Get over it. Don't allow them to use it. It's still there. But I think what I've observed and listened is that you all keep that campaign front and center. I feel that there's less anger, maybe as a political decision around hydroponic, and more joy around 1,000 farmers joining up and embracing the next gen of tough but collaboration on family farms and organic agriculture. And I think you've left the pack wonderfully and appropriately. I'm very impressed. So I said, sure, come on over, throw me in the podcast and catch a few arrows.
Yeah, when you responded some years ago, our very first petition, we didn't know what we were doing. We were not organizers. We were farmers. And we put out a couple petitions, and you signed one of them. And I said, Bob Scowcroft, I've heard that name. Well, I had heard the name, but I didn't know you. And I know that was a somewhat complicated decision. I know that there was a emotional risk to putting your name in there.
Yeah, not the word emotional. maybe more of a strategic moment of, do I really want to jump into this mosh pit after a lifetime of other mosh pits? But I looked at it and thought, well, I feel pretty strongly about it. I finally figured out how it all came about. And it is sort of the worst case of giving our good O-word name to the anonymous bureaucracy called USDA. Really, really the worst example of everything that could have gone wrong. And I got to sign off on it. What I hope, or at least what I mentally hope to do when we would cross paths, is to say, chill out a little bit on the anger and focus on the joy and the dancing and the celebration and the freaking damn good food you get from the farmers that are looking around with each other.
I always get fed well.
That's one of my, meeting those chefs back in the day, in many cases, never has stopped. And I go to a town or look, hey, remember we met there? I'd like to come by. I want you to know outright, I pay my own way, and I don't want any, I got to be straight about this. But would you take this dessert? Oh, okay, sure. There's another, loosen the belt and go for it again.
All right. Bob, obviously there's a lot more to be talked about, and I'm not going to destroy your day here, but there are a few things that I would like to reflect on, and when we started talking, you talked about the agro-industrial complex and your vision of creating an alternative to that, a community-based agriculture. And I know that you must have looked at this, and certainly I have looked at it and wondered if we've taken a wrong turn in the organic world, where we clearly have an agro-industrial complex that's part of it now, and a big part of it. And we have what was called a movement, and that was how, what's her name, who wrote for UNFI?
Melody Adco.
Melody. She wrote in one piece back around Jacksonville that this was basically a conflict between the industry and the movement. And I thought, well, I think that's right. I think that is what's going on. And I'll just say that I believe this is complex. I don't think it's simple, good guys and bad guys. But I think that if I look at the hydroponic production just as one example of an industrial incursion and a transformation of organic in the process, and I go, well, it's still better than growing those same things hydroponically and spraying them. I mean, there is a reduction of pesticides if they're going through certification. But we agree we wouldn't call that organic. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are about this inherent conflict. And on the one hand, there's concentration, and we see concentration of power, concentration of every stage of the industry. When you started, there were all those small stores, and most of them are gone now. And our shopping has moved more and more to larger chains, which are bought by even larger chains, so that I've experienced it in my business. Most of the chains that we've sold to, and we're wholesalers, we sell into chains, and most of them have been bought by somebody else. Three of them are bought by Ahold USA, which is a Dutch multinational. That was Stop and Shop, Hannaford's, Fresh Direct, and Shaw's was bought by Albertsons, and of course Whole Foods was bought by Amazon. And with that transformation, who they want to buy from changes. And there was a point about 2016 where all of those chains were buying local. I mean, it was a conscious program and it was working. And they were very proud of it, and they had all the farmers' pictures on the wall. But they really were buying local. It was, they were bending over to figure out how do we make this work, because our customers want to buy food from local agriculture to the degree that's possible. It's all gone now. It's all gone. There's no, and most of the local buying for all those chains has stopped. And they're sourcing from somebody who can provide them year-round with what they want, with no fuss and muss, and deliver it to every store they have. So that's, and of course the distributors have followed suit. This is the change in our world. This is the change in certified organic right now. What are your thoughts about all this? I know it's a huge and unfocused question, but I think you have thoughts.
Well, it comes from my own environmental origin story. Any product that has little or no suspected carcinogens in it is better. And so, you know, then you look at the different delivery systems and the marketing terminology behind it, and conflict arises, I think. I don't think, I know, you know. It caught my attention when you said in 2016, which if you're of a certain age, it's so long ago, and another age, it's yesterday. My guess, though I think the data might even start to bear it out, is that those last remaining multinational supermarket-y chains are close to panic now. The margins are so small, and they're getting their ass kicked by Amazon and Grubhub food delivery systems, and the Walmarts and Targets, and Costco to some extent. In other words, the supermarkets themselves have some potential to be dinosaurs. They, the data on the Chronicle writes stories of restaurants that were saved during COVID in particular, but still to this day, a generation trained on, okay, my hamburger and French fries are on the way to the house. You know, the word that you haven't raised yet is the consumer side of all of this. Organic has not done a very good job in direct consumer interaction, I think. Supermarkets, they buy ads. They used to buy ads. You got your Wednesday ad in the newspaper on the specials at the Safeways of the world. They don't really buy them anymore. It's all the portals or Facebook or Amazon or Prime, and you get your food depending upon your technological skills, your pocketbook, and the time you want to invest in getting it. And I think not being a student of the overall marketplace these days, I used to get a lot of newsletters. I learned a lot more and saw it, and I've cut almost all of them, all from paper and most from electronic. But my sense is that the fundamental mindset of the consumers has changed to efficiencies, ease, price, and personal delivery services, the last mile. And organic unintentionally hasn't really participated in that overall development, I think. And intriguing to me is the emergence now of food hubs, food clubs, tied around farmers markets, libraries. Our elementary school, I was just talking to Judy this morning, there's a photo essay in our Santa Cruz paper of the farmers market in the elementary school, where programs would allow, when the parents come pick up their kids, certain parts of their food needs, they have an underwritten all organic food basket for $5. And the costs are borne by the community foundation, by grants, by county food programs. And some of the parents, the Afghan parents there and the Salvadorian parents there, have little booths as a micro side hustle. How many elementary school kids get Afghan food, fresh right off right out of the pot, pupusas off the grill, or pupusas, depending upon my debate with my daughter back and forth. This is a hell of an innovation that includes community engagement, it includes education, it includes fresh produce. There's a used book library. Kids can take their books and give books back. It's live music, and it's at the elementary school 4 times a year. Where is the organic activists in that equation? I think should be and better be a place for them in that. But right now it's sort of the farmer's market that's assisting putting together the food box, or one farmer including that as a sort of CSA, either contribution or documentation. Under the current fascist regime, that might be called inclusivity and diversity, and they probably wouldn't like it happening in parts of the country. But movements can arise from that kind of activity, where parents can meet each other in a social hour and pick up some information on other parts of the food system in a very convenient manner. So I actually see those activities both here, and I read about them elsewhere. And I think, this is something to be optimistic about. And I'm not going to let clinical depression take me over the whole time,
Yeah.
ComFood is, a lot of people say, oh God, it's just thousands of posts, it's 9,000 people. But I'm a real fan of ComFood. There's a nugget almost every day. And it's a good place to just keep an eye, particularly if you kind of close your eyes. Oh, wait, that's an idea. It's really cool what's happening in Appalachia with that idea. Or these food hubs are kind of going in a manner that's reflective of what their own community wants and needs. So the volunteers that are showing up or contributing some ideas, at least at this point, there's no national definition of a food hub. So they're becoming indigenous to the place and the people's needs that want to bring those together. Pretty cool.
So, if I understand what you were saying,
no problem. I don't often make total sense.
No. But if I understand it, you're kind of looking towards more of a small farm revolution. That one of the people I interview a lot of people. One of the people I interview is J.M. Fortier, and he's a great student of Elliott Coleman's, but J.M. has taken things, to his own direction, and he's really focused on small farms in the community, feeding the community, and I think that he's been astonishingly successful in Quebec. He's told me that when he got to the county he lives in, he was, I think, one of 2 organic farms, and now there are 40, and they include charcuteries, and they include, cafes, and they include microbreweries, and it's a whole food system that they're developing that's hyper localized. Is that part of what you're talking about?
Well, there's a recipe, and each ingredient is a component of the system's change. What you just described to me is an incredibly charismatic, visionary individual.
Yes.
Not every community has those.
No.
Very few right now.
Yeah.
But the quest for a group of people to exchange their visions and ideas in a collaborative manner is happening in a lot of places now. Food banks are corporate entities in and of themselves in some case. Second Harvest, and the tens of millions and more that they need and want. And it's just, in a way, industrialized process of delivering food to address hunger. Will Allen, when he founded it in Chicago, said, well, no, we're going to address our own hunger. we're going to start growing our own gardens. We're not going to be dependent on just handouts. And that didn't work for them, but the offshoots of that are working, the next gen. So, I think the excitement is, excuse sort of the messy image of it, but a lot of people are throwing a lot of spaghetti against a lot of walls right now because a lot of it is not working. And they, for economic reasons, for location, for their own dietary reasons, for lack of organized conversations around it, they're going out and doing it themselves, or they're trying. And I think that's something that we should be thinking about and identifying and writing about. And the place I see most of those ideas being expressed is on ComFood.
Yeah. One of the things that I see is that a lot of farmers are leaving organic certification. And I see it undeniably because we are an add-on label. And so if somebody drops their certification, they have to drop us or we have to drop them. And it's a lot every year. And I never hear about this from the USDA, the National Organic Program, that people are leaving, but people are leaving. And of course, some of them go out of business because it just doesn't
That's
work.
never changed in my whole 40 years.
Yeah.
People are always leaving, and the net is always more.
Yes.
So we never want to see anyone leave, but I think the reasons are everyone under the sun. I'm not as, quote, concerned about it,
Okay.
as probably others are, and probably get criticized for not. I want more people to farm more organic more often.
Mm-hmm.
But the societal and economic and regional challenges are such that it's never going to work for everybody. We haven't talked about climate change. We haven't talked about water.
Yeah.
There's external
When we talk about farming, we're talking about just about everything.
all of it, yeah. And
It's
then
just-
there's external crises that, for the most part, come across a farmer's screen.
Yes.
Immigration,
Yes.
documentation, racism. So it's, I guess I'm just rattling off my current rage. It's amazing that organic farmers keep farming.
Yeah.
because of what she and he have to deal with.
Yeah.
And it's a great honor to be able to advocate on their behalf, I guess.
Do you think that basic issue that has become, for me, rather central of consolidation? At first, I wasn't quite sure what was going on with the USDA, why organic was so plagued. I mean, obviously there was greed and corruption. That is part of life, but I've come to believe, I believe that we would have resolved the hydroponic issue in organic in 2014 because nobody knew at that point that Driscoll's was part of that hydroponic conversation. And I met with OTA and it was like, let's end this. And then we all discovered Driscoll's, and then that was the end of the conversation. So, and I'm not picking on Driscoll's, they're a brilliant large company. They do what they do remarkably well. They're very smart, they're very clever. They're no meaner than anybody else in the world, but they play by the rules of a large company, which is they use their influence to protect themselves and to reduce competition. And they're very effective at it. So any small local grower has very little chance, I don't care how good their berries are, of being able to break into the market for their short season and get them on the shelf. So there are all these alternative ways, farmers market, restaurants, lots of things, but where most people go to get their food is a supermarket. And that farmer no longer has that as an option. He or she did in 2016, but they don't now.
I have blinders to the People's Republic of Santa Cruz. Around here, you always wait for Swanton to come on first, because Swanton and Jim, and really the protocol he invented by trial and error made for some of the greatest fresh strawberries you'll ever eat. The gentleman with the blueberries, I think in Florida, similar. You just stop in your tracks. Actually, went to the market yesterday and it was the first blueberries. This woman, I just bought some from the store, and I said, "Oh, you're coming now?" "Yeah, this is our first. We'll be here next week." And the difference was stunning. Her blueberries
between those and King Grove,
and what I bought in the store. The emphasis on taste. I mean, it's just this again, there's a little risky to say that farmers either don't or can't market to any scale compared to Godzilla and Mothra out there. And that too is missing. The trade either organized under a particular acronym or individually is really, I don't see any consumer focused facing organic education out there anymore. You just I call it GNA, generally nodded agreement. Yeah, she's organic. Okay, that's that. You don't know what that means with her struggles with walnuts or ice cream, organic sheep, Becky King's remarkable organic cheese operation, and nobody really has put money in or emphasized it, other than some of the food hubs now, and some of the they have events and organic farm tours here now, and they're almost all sold out. People want to learn more, but it's their choice to pay the $35 or to make the time to do it. It's not institutionalized that much. CCOF doesn't do much about it, as far as I can tell.
Right.
And I don't know about many of the other verification groups either.
Yeah.
But as I said, I'm beginning to think that I've heard, secondhand at least, that the global supermarket chains are really, really nervous about the impact of COVID on food buying habits.
Yeah.
And the quick turn that people took to other means.
Yeah.
I'm blown away when I go into Target to pick up the 3 things, cleaning material we get from Target, to walk through. I always walk through their fresh produce stands, and they have apples and bananas and a good bit labeled organic in there.
Yeah.
And Costco is probably the largest seller of all. Costco's very different than the other ones. They pay the highest wages. When DEI came out, they told the felon that, screw you, we're totally into DEI and we're staying with it and we're growing it. And this differentiates us. We embrace all cultures and the food that they eat in Costco, and we pay the best of the workers to do that.
Yeah.
Whoa, there's a marketing approach.
Yes, I agree.
And so where does the farmer fit into that? The family farmer fit into that?
Yeah.
Very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Unless they consolidate in a veritable vegetable-like operation. VV is one of the few left that will co-pack. And Dale Koch has started. Dale's very interesting how he's made his way through the changes in the community, and now has his own co-packing operation, his own cold storage, and he even has his own trucks, I think.
Yeah.
All around his original acreage.
Yeah.
So he maneuvered his way through it very successfully.
Yeah.
And he's a very small farmer in the eyes of California. Pretty damn large, probably, to some of the family farmers around the country.
Right. Right.
So,
all right.
There you go.
Well, it's a conundrum. It will remain one, but we will see what happens. I am not expecting the supermarkets, the multinationals, to wither and die, a la Karl Marx. But we will see. Because indeed we are in such uncertain times. We don't know what's going to happen about anything at this point. We don't.
Exactly. Over in the 41st, right on the edge of Santa Cruz, Capitola, Aptos, both Lucky's and Albertsons disappeared. I think the Safeway on the west side, I can't even, was it on hold? There's Albertsons, I think, is the mothership that bought several of those other chains, and now they have one or two. New Leaf took the Lucky's space. And it's like a freaking organic candy store to go in there. I'm like, Judy, let's just go there and walk around. This is unbelievable. And their displays, their marketing, their names, their product names, the delis, stunning. So they now have 4 or 5 around here. And of course, they were bought by the Stan Amy's company in Oregon. So I think there's 5. He kept them. God dang. Memory's an issue when you get in your 70s.
Yes, I know.
Be aware.
I am in my 70s, I know.
There you go. But they've created a fun place to go to, beautiful food, a couple extra nickels on the margins for profitability, and well-trained multicultural staff to serve you and stop what they're doing and walk 3 aisles down to show you exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So that's their response, and they're now doing. We went down to deal with our Xfinity phone system, and there's a hole in the big old Roth clothing. I think they've taken the sign down, but there's construction underway, and the New Leaf is replicating their 41st Avenue store down in the Route 1 and Ocean corner there. So it's wild.
Yeah.
Wild.
All right, Bob.
Helpful?
It's all good. It's all good. Thank you. I like to give people a chance to say something in response to the question I didn't ask that you wish I had asked, or whatever is on your mind before we close.
It's maybe if you come out to Eco Farm or somebody, it's a whole podcast, I think, in and of itself, which is in part why Organic Farming Research Foundation came about. And that's the conundrum isn't even the word, it's the institutional, endowed, academic, peer review publication system that we have in the United States that has been an incredible barrier to organic research and information. It's been a ridiculous struggle to get organic extension agents. It's been, I'm so proud, OFRF did the first study of all the, we did searching for the O word for the CRIS system and how many organic papers they had. And that was in the very early days of OFRF. We looked at 30,000. We had a night crew that came in using 70 words and typing them in to turn up these research papers that the Chris system had posted. And we found 31 appropriate peer-reviewed organic research papers out of 30,000. Okay, there's probably hundreds more now. Then we did, Jane Suby did analysis of all the land grants around the country and their acreage, and only one university had certified organic acreage for research to happen on. Others claimed to have organic research programs on their land, but they had done carbaryl research the year before and had a number of scientists looking at fertilizer research 2 years later. It was not dedicated. And so you had a structural system utterly unprepared to commit to permanent dedication of the playground that's called organic systems research. And now, and so that we wrote OREI. We got $3 million a year, and with Breeze's great work, we were up to $50 million a year, and now there's a hell of a good chance that all of that will be gone. And the universities, once they take that dedicated acreage out, they got to wait 3 more freaking years to put it back in again. Young grad students that want to do this have little monies on the Fed side to support their work, and with very rare exceptions, very few philanthropic organizations, and very, very, very few organic certifier organizations that are looking 20 years down the road. So, I'd love to see you all create an endowed fund for organic research yourselves.
Yes, I would love that too.
So,
At the moment, the endowment would be very small.
OFRF never pulled off the endowment, at least during my run, and we got a couple 100,000, I think. But.
Just for people who don't know, OFRF is the Organic Farming Research Foundation.
Correct. Sorry.
Right. That's just because not everybody
it's good.
knows it.
I'm better. I'm losing my training skills here.
Yeah. Good.
So yeah, I wanted to just.
So maybe next Eco Farm, if I don't have COVID again. And you don't have COVID, we'll sit down, we'll talk about OFRF, because I meant to today, but I knew there'd be too much.
Yeah, well, and you caught me with all these things that I just pulled out of the bins in the shed and in the garage and in the file cabinets. But I think I think those are, it's just another incredible hurdle that the system can't address. It's just structurally, I don't want to use apples and oranges because that's too close. I mean, there's the tenured professor problem, there's the dean's challenge, there's the departmental ag department isn't as sexy as the tech department. There's any number of, I hope, momentary reasons that have delayed this so much, but what little the openings that we had for national organic peer-reviewed research funded through the land grant system and the university system is pretty dark at the moment.
Yeah.
Not closed entirely, but pretty dark.
Yeah.
And it's again up to the farmers to demand it, call for it, and point out the lack of it.
All right.
There you go.
All right, Bob. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I enjoy it.
It was a great visit.
Thank you for listening to the Real Organic Podcast. If you have a spare minute today, the single most effective way you can help us grow this movement and others to find this podcast is by leaving us a rating and a review wherever you listen to our podcast. You can find a video version of this interview on our website or on our YouTube channel, and you can join us every Sunday for a new episode featuring voices from the organic movement. And if you haven't already, please sign up for our weekly newsletter at realorganicproject.org/email. See you next time.